introduce you all to Lee Berrettini, owner of Bird's Pharmacy. He's a pharmacist. He's kind of integrity in his work, you know, being able to help people through the use of diet to get off their medications. And I was fortunate enough to grow up around this man when he also helped teach me a little bit about basketball and a few other things. So when I found out all the great things he was doing, through actual clients of ours that we just could never reach to help them to realize what they needed to do to lose weight, he was able to, just by putting it in perspective. And so I thought that tonight we could come here and tell you a little bit about the diet that he works with everybody on, and also you might have other questions that I'm sure he would have the knowledge to answer. So thanks for being here.
I actually have known Travis since probably 6 or 7 years old.
Sorry.
Very good. He did some, how long have you been up here?
Oh, we just started. Just a month ago we opened our doors.
He's got a great reputation back in our area, and I heard from client after client how good you were doing with him. So you guys should be happy. And it's really nice to see you people take your health in your own hands, because that's where it should be. And you want to keep it there. Don't put it in the hands of the medical complex, because your health is not their priority. Profit is. Anyway, I brought a copy of my diet if anybody wants it. To give you a little background on me, I'm a compounding pharmacist, and I started specializing almost 25 years ago in nutrition and hormone balancing. And that's any hormone, cortisol, thyroid, any of the sex steroids, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, pregnenolone, all of those. Insulin, neurotransmitter of the brain. We have a lot of hormones that people don't think of as hormones, and that's basically what I do all day. And over the course of time, I developed this diet, basically in conjunction with a program I developed after I learned about this from a European endocrinologist about adrenal fatigue. And it took me several years to come up with this diet. And the reason it did was it took that long to go to a number of different conferences around the country where I met with doctors who were truly interested in curing and healing their patients. In other words, they rarely use drug therapy because, with very few exceptions, drugs are not designed to fix you. They're designed to manage your disease or control your symptoms. The drug industry, once they have you, they don't want to lose you as a customer. So, anyway, I met with, during that time, an endocrinologist, a cardiologist, a GI doctor, a psychiatrist, 2 family physicians with huge wellness clinics, and a PhD in human nutrition. And I basically just took what I thought were their best ideas, eliminated offending foods, and came up with this diet. And we've used it ever since. I finished refining this around 2003. We've used it many thousands of patients for any number of things. But I did it primarily for this extreme hormone imbalance with weak adrenals. And when I put this into play, within a few months I realized from patients' feedback that all of a sudden they didn't need prescription drugs for any number of things, which is a great thing, because you're never going to have access to this knowledge, unfortunately, but prescription drugs, properly prescribed, properly administered, is the leading cause of death in this country. But anyway, what we try to do, what Travis said, is to get people healthy and keep them healthy. The diet is a metabolically balanced whole foods diet, and you're eating throughout the day. It's extremely low carb, almost no carb, and whole foods only. So basically, what most people do is 3 meals and 2 snacks. Snacks are healthy nuts like almonds, pecans, walnuts, raw vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, celery, maybe hard-boiled eggs, deviled eggs, olives, things like that. Evenly spaced meals, you eat basically protein the size of the palm of your hand, any quality animal protein, because animal protein has all the essential amino acids. There's no plant protein that can make that statement. So, doesn't mean you can't have plant protein. It's just realize that unless you are very meticulous about combining them, you're not going to have complete complement of all essential amino acids. Anyway, the protein portion is the size of the palm of your hand. We want to maintain lean muscle mass. We don't want, matter of fact, almost the only restriction in this diet, size-wise, quantity-wise, is protein. We don't want too much protein because if you have too much protein, your liver has a mechanism to convert it into sugar, which is why Atkins stops working for a lot of patients, and it either stops working or they start gaining weight. It's too high protein. So, moderate animal protein, enough to maintain lean muscle mass. The rest of your plate you want and as many times as you want, of raw or lightly steamed vegetables. Green leafy vegetables like you find in salad, or dense fibrous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, spinach, things like that. You put a good fat like butter, olive oil, avocado oil on, season it with as much sea salt as you want, pepper, whatever you want to season it with, and you eat like that, because pretty much everything I didn't mention are things you need to avoid. There are no grains on the diet, which means no bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, pretzels, pizza, pastry, anything with wheat or flour. It also means no corn, oats, or rice. There's no dairy on the diet other than butter and real yogurt. Real yogurt is a whole foods yogurt, organic, maybe like Stonefield Farms mix or Dannon mix one. There's some organic Greek yogurts, but it's the real thing. It's not a low fat, it's not a no fat. There's no sugar or sweetener added, and there's no fruit in it. There's also no fruit on my diet, at least in the recovery phase where we're trying to work with someone to get them healthy. And you need to realize that fruit is not nearly as healthy for you as you've been led to believe. I know the government says 3 to 5 servings a day. I tell healthy people 3 to 5 servings a month may be too much. You got to realize that fruit, until we had mass transportation and refrigeration, we had access to for maybe 3 to 4 months of the year, harvest time. And I think the reason for that was we had a higher carbohydrate or sugary type food to increase our insulin levels. And as we do that, we store fat for the winter, to help us survive the winter. Now we have access to fruit every day of the year if we want it. And on top of that, we bred fruit to be sweet and juicy because that's what we like. So instead of a more dense, fibrous food, where you had a more gradual elevation of blood sugar and insulin, you have a rapid rise now because of the sugar content. So basically, that's the diet. You need to realize you should always avoid soy protein. It's extremely dangerous hormonally. And I know some of you may partake of protein shakes, which is fine. You can certainly do that. You'd want to restrict yourself to whey protein or casein, which is a milk protein, if you're going to be truly grain-free. And again, this is a diet for people that are in some form of ill health or need hormone balancing. And it's a recovery phase. I mean, they certainly don't have to stay on this for life unless they want to, and plenty of them do because it keeps their migraines away or their gut issues or whatever. You need to basically eat these good foods on a consistent basis. You need to control your insulin levels. I know this diet sounds strict, and I designed it specifically like this. The beauty of the diet is when you eat like this, generally within 3 to 5 days, sometimes quicker, sometimes slower. Matter of fact, the worst case scenario, we had a woman that took 2 weeks to get metabolic balance. When you get metabolic balance, your hunger's gone and you have no cravings. It's all caused by a reaction of elevated blood sugar followed by elevated insulin. And when you eat something sweet or starchy, that's exactly what happens. When they come down quickly, and they will, you release 2 hormones, you go from the gut directly to the brain to call for more food, specifically something sweet or starchy. And you may have felt this, maybe all of you, at some point in time. You may have a big starchy meal, plate of pasta, a lot of potatoes, bread, whatever. You get up from the table feeling full. 45 minutes later, you're scrounging around looking for something to eat, specifically something sweet or starchy. That's those 2 hormones at play, because your stomach is still physically full. So at that point, you either have created or you have continued that process of hunger and craving until you break that pattern. And you're only going to break it when you eat properly. You're going to have that continue. The other thing that happens at that point, besides that craving and that fluctuation, it causes cortisol, your main stress hormone, to fluctuate. This is your main adrenal hormone, and your adrenal system is your master controlling hormone system. It directly impacts how your thyroid works or doesn't work, your sex steroids, the neurotransmitter in your brain. Literally every hormone you have in your body is dictated by what's going on with your adrenals. So what's happening when you eat like that is you've got a pattern like this of elevated and peaks and valleys of all these different hormones and hormone systems for the next several hours until you eat like that again. And you're going to eat like that again because you've either initiated or created or perpetuated that cycle of hunger and craving. And that's all this is. It's just a metabolically balanced diet where you're not pushing hormones because of what you eat. And you need to realize that if you want to get healthy and stay healthy, you've got to eat right. And you also need to realize that when you break a diet, when you've been on it, and lose that metabolic balance, it's not going to come back right away. It's going to come back maybe a few days later, assuming you've eaten properly in the meantime. But you've started that whole cascade of improper hormone levels, and that's accelerated aging. much as you want, and they can be saturated fats. Matter of fact, saturated fats are necessary for life. There's never been any saturated fat found in any arterial fat in anyone ever. It's another myth from the drug industry and the food industry because they want to sell you damaged fats, basically trans fats that are able to be stored in a grocery store. Things have been hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated. You need to stay away from them. All the vegetable oils, you can have fruit and nut oils, fruit oils like grapeseed, olives are fruit, avocados. They're all great oils, and they have high smoke points. You can cook with them as long as they don't smoke. It's great saturated fats are things like butter, lard, coconut oil, and then there's some marine oils that are good, and there's essential fatty acids, omega-3s and 6s. If you ever supplement with them, you want to do them in the plant-based parent compounds, which would be flaxseed oil for your omega-3 component, and any number of different choices for omega-6s. You can primrose oil, borage oil, fern seed oil, sunflower seed oil, anything like that. And you need to maintain the proper ratio because if you have too high a ratio of omega-3s, you're impairing your immune system. If you have too high a ratio of omega-6s, you're actually promoting inflammation. So, yeah, no rocket science here. It's all basic biochemistry. And that's basically all I think I'm going to talk about with that. I think I described it pretty well. How about questions? Yes.
I have a question. Would you suggest having any specific hormone levels drawn to find out if there is an imbalance on any of those?
Well, I can pretty much guarantee there'll be an imbalance. Whether or not it's found, it is debatable. And when I work with a patient, I take a history, and it may take an hour or 2 hours. And during the course of that, I would determine whether or not you would need levels taken, depending on your symptoms. A lot of times it can just be done with symptoms, and a lot of doctors don't do the testing anyway. And depending on what it is I'm looking for, if it's a cortisol issue or stress issue with adrenals, the blood test is almost totally inaccurate. I've worked on probably 6,000 adrenal patients in the last 15 years. I've seen probably between 600 and 700 blood levels, and seen one abnormal one. And you don't need to be tested. You can test your saliva. It costs about $150. You can test it 4 times throughout the day. There's a body reaction to your pupil's response to light. But if you have that, it's 100% accurate. You have weak adrenals. So you don't need to pay anything for that. Thyroid testing is kind of tricky, and unfortunately, most doctors will do 1 or 2 tests when actually 5 need to be done. And when I work with a patient, I insist on, or tell them to insist on having them done. And then I look not just at the fact that they're in the normal range, but where they are in the normal range, because there's a conversion problem with a lot of thyroid patients. As far as the sex steroids go, a lot of that depends on symptoms, and that's not generally as tricky. So, and a lot of times we'll do that without seeing hormone levels. And just to save the patient time and money, now if you need them, we generally will know that pretty quickly because you won't respond to what we're doing. It's pretty rare. I've done this in probably 10,000 women, maybe more over the years. So,
Could you tell them a little bit more about that pupil test? Because
yes.
I mean, that's something I could do.
You can do this tonight. You need to get in a totally dark room and take a flashlight in it. And you're going to get as close, if you wear glasses, get your glasses off, get as close as you need to get to the mirror to see what your pupil's going to do, which is a little black dot in the middle of your eye. You hold the flashlight 6 to 8 inches, maybe 10 inches away from your head to the side, so that when you turn the light on, it's going to flash across your eye. In other words, you're going to aim at the front of your eye orbit bone here and the bridge of your nose. So the light is going to flash across. It's a 90-degree angle to where you're looking at. You turn that on and you watch your pupil. If you don't have weak adrenals, your pupil will get small and stay small without fluctuating for 2 full minutes. If you have any degree of adrenal weakness, it's various. Sometimes it'll just get big and stay big, and that means you really have it badly because you're not even trying to fluctuate up and down a little bit like this. But usually you'll see it up and down slowly like that. We've seen patients or have patients reported that it pulsates like that. So, but that's an extremely accurate test for weak adrenals. And this controls every hormone you have in your body. A lot of people think they have poor thyroid function and they need thyroid help. When in fact, they don't. It's this impacting when you have improper cortisol levels, whether they're too high or too alone, it doesn't matter which. You can't convert the inactive thyroid hormone, which is the primary thyroid product of your thyroid gland, to the active one in the cell. It's just not going to happen biochemically. So that's one big reason a lot of people think they're thyroid people and they really aren't. And the test will come back normal at that point anyway. Matter of fact, if you have adrenal fatigue, you may get tested for everything the doctor knows to test you for, and almost everything will come back normal.
Ideally, the pupil will stay small for 2
Stay
seconds.
small and not fluctuate for 2 full months.
Minutes.
Who can hold their flashlight that
Yes.
long?
If you're having trouble holding that flashlight up because your arm gets sore, you don't have to go any further. I can tell you right now, one of the primary symptoms of that is fatigue in the afternoon, between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, 7 and 9 in the evening, and work. And a further pattern of weak adrenals is if you stay up past 10:30 at night, you get kind of like it's not really a second wind, but you're not as interested in going to bed. You might be up till midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Some women actually do their house cleaning.
I was 10:45, am I still okay?
Yeah, yes. And then it's a further extension of that cortisol pattern is basically you wake up multiple times during the night. In some people this is spooky. I had 2 patients in on 2 consecutive days that they woke up both at 3:33 a.m. So it's just an improper cortisol rhythm that is caused by this. And what you need to realize is if you've got that going on, matter of fact, the program I use to get people out of this is basically this diet, and it needs to be complied with if you expect to get out of this quickly, along with relaxation techniques. And those relaxation techniques take into account physical exercise. Now, the thing where this gets a little tricky is you've got to be careful not to overdo things because this is a stored stress condition, and stress is multifactorial. It's physical, and that could be too much or too little physical activity. It could be being overweight, it could be poor sleep, it could be chronic pain, it could be poor diet. There's a dozen different multiples just for physical stress, but it's also mental, emotional, nutritional, environmental, and spiritual, and it's a build-up over time. So what you've got to realize is what you're doing physically, whether this is work, play, or relaxation, you pay attention to 3 things: how long you're spending at it, how intensely you're doing it, and most importantly, how you feel when you're done. When you're done, you need to feel good and invigorated at that point, and also 2 hours later. If you're tired when you're done, you've gone way too far and you've added stress. If you feel good when you're done, but tired 2 hours later, or stiff and sore the next day, you've still gone too far and you've added stress. So you need to back off. Doesn't mean you stop. A lot of people have this condition, have a lot of muscle issues, stiffness, soreness, typically in this area here, back and shoulders, neck, because that's where they hold their stress. But it could be anywhere. Basically what it is you've tensed those muscles and not used them. So when you tense them, you increase the flow of blood to them, but because you're not using them, the blood collects there, pools there, along with waste products like lactic acid. So you need to promote the flow of blood through there. The key is, as you're doing that, you don't want to be fatiguing the muscle. So you start with some gentle stretches. You progress into, if you have this in a major way, you progress into yoga, Pilates, and then range of motion exercises like Travis was doing just a little while ago. And you get to make sure that you tolerate it without feeling fatigued 2 hours later. So.
Could you talk about some of the effects of weak adrenals, like whether it be weight gain or?
Yes, it's almost always you see belly fat, accumulation of belly fat for no apparent reason. And you'll see, usually people will tell me they've had, it's one of the questions I ask them is an accumulation of abdominal fat over the last year or 2 or 3. And a lot of times it will happen with no change in diet, with no change in exercise or activity levels. And it's basically, again, one of your physical responses to stress, which is the fight or flight reaction to some degree, which means your liver is dumping glycogen in the bloodstream, which is a sugar. Insulin has to be released next to get that out of the bloodstream into the muscle so you can take action, either run away or whatever it is. And then insulin is a fat-storing hormone. So you can actually gain weight and belly fat, abdominal fat, midsection fat, whatever you want to call it, without eating. And actually, you see at the same time in most people, you'll see a decrease in muscle mass. Generally in the deltoid muscles or the thighs or the buttocks. It's a muscle wasting, it's more than a muscle wasting condition, it's a wasting condition overall. You're in a catabolic state. Everyone that has this is losing bone mass at the same time. You have a weakened immune system, a much higher risk of cancer and heart disease. It's not just the annoying symptoms, but that's what belly fat is. It's in almost every case,
refractory, like how long is the initial phase typically?
If you're gonna balance the adrenals, it's 6 months, hopefully no longer. Now that
Basic, the
depends.
basic diet.
If you need to do that program, you need to realize that you've got to eat like that for 6 months. You've got to do the relaxation techniques for 6 months. You've got a mountain of stress you've got to get rid of, which means you've got to do that every day. You've got more stress going on coming in, and then you're starting the nutrients to repair and rebuild that system. And if you don't do all three of those all the time, you're not going to recover in 6 months, I will guarantee. And you may never recover. I've had plenty of patients that will be inconsistent and they'll mess around with this for years. And in fact, I have a woman from Utica right now who's been on this off and on this program for 7, 8 years because she won't be consistent. And I told her about 3 years ago, because she got back 2 days off for 3 days, and when she was on it, she wouldn't do the relaxation techniques. I only just said, Mary, I said, why are you wasting your time and money? If you're not going to do it right, you're not going to recover, just either do it or quit doing it. And she did it and almost recovered. And then she had a lot of, you said, a daughter get married and a whole bunch of other stress coming into life. And you got to realize that even happy events are stressful. Any major or significant change in your life is a significant stress. And restore it. So, you mentioned something about stress because a lot of people think they don't have it or they've had it a long time ago. You store it. And the reason we store it is we have to adjust to it mentally. Otherwise, we're going to go crazy, have a nervous breakdown. Hormonal biochemical, you don't adjust. You have a very distinct pattern of symptoms. I've had plenty of patients over the years tell me, how do you know this about me? You're describing me exactly. Well, it's because of what they have. So, other questions?
Some of the people that I talk to that are coming here and different things have questions about menopause. I think maybe even irritable bowel syndrome, just different things. And we found this diet to be helpful.
Great, yes. Grain fruit, I mean, it's amazing what grains do. There are hundreds of studies, even books written about what grains do. And one of the best recommendations maybe I can give you is to just stay totally away from grains for the rest of your life. And that's all grains. It's not just gluten issue. There's gliadin, there's other proteins in grains that are very irritating. Irritable bowel is a factor of irritating foods like that. It also can be hormonal. You very commonly see it with weak thyroid activity and weak adrenal activity. And as they get back in balance, you'll see that resolve. Now, I had a patient, this is probably 5 years ago, who came in with irritable bowel. She was 23 years old. I guess she was probably about 40 pounds overweight. I didn't think she looked that bad. She looked at me like about 20 pounds overweight. But she had violent diarrhea within 5 minutes of eating anything. It didn't matter what she ate. And no drug was working, the doctor wasn't helping. And her aunt actually works with us. So she told her to have her come in. She was also insulin-dependent diabetic. Now, insulin-dependent only because the oral medication stopped working. And because she understood how to manipulate her insulin levels, I gave her the diet. Otherwise, I wouldn't give it to her because if you don't realize what you're doing, you're going to drive your blood sugar down too low and you can wound up home and actually die. But she understood what she was doing. Within 48 hours of the diet, the irritable bowel totally cleared up. Within 4.5 months, she'd lost 35 pounds, went back to her endocrinologist, and she hadn't needed insulin after the first few days. And he told her she no longer had diabetes. And she showed the doctor the diet, and he said, geez, I've never seen anything like that. And I said, well, no kidding, Becky. He said if he had and was using it, he wouldn't be seeing many diabetic patients. Type 2 diabetes is a condition that is reversible in almost every case. It's just a lifestyle change. And you got to realize that what they do by targeting you to look at your blood sugar levels is the wrong thing. You need to look at insulin levels, which they won't look at because they can't manipulate them with a drug. But it's an improper insulin response, and the only way you're going to fix that, the only way you're going to alter the progression of that disease is by maintaining proper insulin levels, which means eating properly. It's the only way.
How do you deal with the psychological part of?
We do a brain transplant.
That's what I
The
mean.
psychological part of what?
Full of giving up the whole world of food for 6 months
It
or forever.
really becomes easy. I've had plenty of people that go on this adrenal program, and they've told me within a week or so, it's the easiest part of the program. The hardest part, if you have that, or anyone who has it, the hardest part of that program is relaxing. It really is. Because I tell people they have to sit down and be quiet for at least 1 20-minute session a day, and ideally 2 or more. where you do whatever relaxes you, prayer, meditation, listening to classical music, and then you want to progress into range of motion too, because most everybody has muscle involvement. The problem is most people can't sit and be comfortable in seconds. It literally is in almost everybody the hardest part is the eye.
20 seconds or 20 minutes?
20
20 seconds I can handle, 20 minutes I'm losing my mind.
Yeah. I've been eating specifically like this without cheating since the first of the year. I haven't been hungry that entire time. And after a day, I didn't have any cravings. Now, men usually adjust quicker than women because of women are women. No, they have different involvement with estrogen and thyroid. It's an issue. Anyway, but when you adjust it really, I put both my granddaughters on this first of the year to work on their adrenals. One's 10 years old, one's 17. Both young girls above their sweets, and they whined for 2 weeks because they knew it was coming. Within 1 week, they both came up to me without me asking. I said, "Man, I really felt this in my life." And you'll see that if you really will. And then if you go back to eating, you're going to get sick. Two things are going to happen. You eat properly for anywhere from 2 to 3 days, ideally 6 or more, ideally restaurant, and you eat something that you shouldn't eat, that you know you shouldn't eat, like a grain or something like that, or food that you may know you're sensitive to. Two things are likely going to happen. You're going to feel like you're going to have lost the taste for that and the sensation and pleasure for it. More importantly, you're going to feel probably pretty sick, generally within 2 hours, and maybe for the next 2 days. You'll see. A lot of things that you feel, the headaches that come and go, it's the food you're eating. It really is. And you'll see. If you eat properly, you'll see that. I've had people call me, this isn't common. I'll hear it a few times a year. They'll call me like the day after and say, is it possible I can be feeling this good already? Now, we don't typically hear that, but we do hear it. We usually will hear that within a week or two. Yes?
Does this diet seem to help blood pressure too?
Yes. We after we started using this for adrenal patients, we used it. We saw people have a need to just drop their drugs or whatever. When we're working with a patient who actively wants to do that, we have them monitor their blood pressure on a daily basis. A lot of times that's all that needs to be done. Sometimes we'll use a specific blend of potassium and magnesium for maybe 1 to 2 months. They're two metals that relax the smooth muscles inside their blood vessels. And we've seen plenty of patients that after a month or two of that, their blood pressure normalizes and it stays normalized. Again, it's not rocket science. Matter of fact, I had a nurse from up this area probably 5 years ago. Her blood pressure was 194 over 94. And she was a nurse practitioner. She can prescribe it. The problem with blood pressure medication is it alters the normal body function. And because it does that, it stops working. Your body gets resistant to it. And there's 4 different classes. And over the course of 6 to 10 years, you're going to be on all 4 of them. And then it's just going to be a matter of hoping that you control it. So she knew what the picture was and didn't want to get into it. So we put her on the diet, and I put her on 3 nutrients. I was a little more aggressive than normal because it was so high. We put her on the potassium, magnesium. We put her on the active form of folic acid, which is 5-methyl-tetrahydrofolate, folate, because at least 60% of the people in this country can't convert folic acid to the real thing because of an enzyme deficiency. And then I put her on a sustained-release arginine, which produces a gas within the blood vessels to relax the smooth muscles. So we were doing the same end result by 3 different mechanisms, and within 3 weeks her blood pressure was 122/70.
Wow.
Now the really neat thing